Welcome to this module called Costing for Profit, starting out in the right direction. What this is all about is really making sure that before you start out on a project, you've spent a bit of extra time at the beginning looking at a couple of different ways to cost out the project in order to make it more likely that you can identify ways of maximizing the profit in the job, because it's a lot easier to spend a bit of time, extra time in the early stages of the costing process to try and make sure that A, it's the right type of project, B, it's going to return you the type of gross profit figure that you need to be able to achieve in order to run your business. And you want to do that at the beginning of the process, because once you've locked in that price, it's very, very difficult to make too many more improvements into the amount of profit that is generated from it. So just in order to help frame this little module up, I suppose, just wanted to run through this little example of comparing a couple of different types of businesses and the different elements of different types of money which is part of the business that you have. A guy called Michael Gerber, in his book called The E-Myth Contractor, talked about 4 different types of money in your business, and those are revenue, profitability or profit, cash flow, and return on equity. And you don't need to be an accountant to know all the ins and outs of those different types of money, but you need to be aware that there are different types or aspects to money in your business, and to have an appreciation of how the different types of money can influence the outcome of your business is an important thing. And we're focusing primarily here on profitability. But just by way of an example, we've got a couple of businesses here, business A and business B, and as we look at the different aspects of money there, I want you to decide as to which business you think is best. So business A has a net profit figure there of $250,000. Business B has a net profit figure of $150,000. So which business is best? Well, hopefully that's fairly obvious to you. It's certainly obvious to me. Business A, being $250,000 profit, is a better business. All right, so now look at adding in a different aspect of the business, namely the amount of money that the owner has invested in the business. Business A is investment from the owner of $2 million, which means that the return on equity of the money that the owner's put in is 12.5%. Business B has only had an investment of $500,000, so the return on equity from that business is 30%. So which business is better now? So that return on investment looking pretty damn good there at 30%. So, well, maybe business B is better. Okay, so we're looking now at a third aspect of money in your business, namely cash flow. And specifically here, we're looking at the average number of days that the business takes to be paid from its debtors. And business A, on average, takes 21 days to get the money from their clients. Business B is 84 days. So you tell me now, which business would you prefer to have? And those different aspects, obviously I've chosen significant variances in those figures just to illustrate a point, but point is, it's a bit confusing, and you need to keep your eye on different numbers within your business and not get too focused on one particular thing with the risk of something else going wrong in another part of the business. But what we're looking at here primarily in this module is all about profitability in your business and ways to increase the profitability. Specifically, what we're looking at here is making sure that you perhaps calculate a higher profitability in the projects before you even start. So looking at your business, and it's the same with any business, it can be viewed as a little bit as a leaky bucket. So into the top of the bucket you pour the revenue, being the sales that come into the business, and all businesses have inefficiencies and leaks in them. The question is, how big are those leaks? And it can be a far more effective way to make improvements in your business rather than just trying to pour more revenue in the top end of the system, is before you do that, plug some of those leaks so that cash and profit doesn't leak out. And what we're looking at specifically here is plugging that leak into the way that the costing is done up front. Now, I'm not a builder, but I certainly remember my third form woodworking class when the teacher talked about the old rule of carpentry of measure twice, cut once. And that's a very wise saying, and it not only applies in carpentry, but it applies in many aspects of business and in life as well. Basically, what that says is, before you make that final decision, before you make that final cut, you spend a bit of extra time thinking about, is that the right move or not? And if you can, if you've got a second measure to be able to run over that process before you make that decision, then that's probably a good idea too. So this module is about adding in a second costing process into your business. So figure twice, quote once. So before we just get into that, briefly look at different costing systems in a business. I won't spend too long here because you're probably well aware of those. But there's four basic types. There's probably others, but there's four basic ones. Number one is fixed price process. So you're guaranteeing the whole project price to a client. It's a higher risk pricing strategy on your part because you're guaranteeing that. It also should be a higher return system as well. So where there is risk, there should be return. A lower risk method is to do it on charge up. So you perhaps agree to a fixed markup percentage with your client and perhaps a fixed labour rate or what have you. And then as the project goes through, you just bill for the hours that you expend on it, the materials and subcontractors with your agreed markup, and bill regularly as the project goes through. Third one is a bit of a blend of the above two, whereby you possibly can lock in the fixed price for the key components of the project. Those are likely to be being supplied by subcontractors to you. So once you've got those prices locked in from them, you can add a margin on and then lock those prices to a quote to the client, and then perhaps do charge up on the balance of the project. And fourth main one would be just purely labour only, whereby the client is providing all the materials and organising subcontractors and what have you. You just rock up there in the morning, do your 9 hours or whatever it is, and send them a bill for the number of hours by the rate as you go through. So I want to look at a simple example here of a project, and I've chosen nice easy figures. So in this particular example here, we've got, and this is put together as if it's a quote to a client. You've got the materials, you're charging them for $50,000 worth of materials. Subcontractors, you're charging them on at $10,000. Labour, you're figuring there's 1,000 hours there and you're charging those out at $40 an hour. $40,000. So then your total cost there is $100,000. Now, for quite a few contractors, that may be as far as that quote goes, and that becomes the selling price to the client. Some contracts allow for an overall contractor's margin to be added on. It's probably quite common, especially in commercial contracts, because the margins that are in the top part of the calculation there may be quite slim, if at all, and so just purely an overall contractor's margin is added on, some refer to as the P&G. So that is something that may be there in some contracts. In this one, we've added 10% contractor's margin for an overall selling price of $110,000. So the big question is there enough profit in this job? And that's a really, really important question, and it can be a very difficult one to answer. And it's one that a lot of contractors don't answer, or if they do answer it, it's perhaps months down the track when the job is either done, or it's even later than that when their accounts are in from their accountant and they find, well, actually we didn't make as much money as we kind of thought. Okay, we'll try and not make that mistake again, and we'll do better next time. There is a better way, and this is by extracting out the various elements of margin as you go through and adding those up separately, and then checking those against a target gross profit percentage that you want to make out of the job. So looking at our example again, and I'm just looking at the simplest part of that for make it ease of calculation. And you know, the way this is put together here is traditionally the way that most contractors will cost their jobs. They have the materials which they add a margin onto. There's a subcontractor who will do the same. The labor is calculated at the number of hours multiplied by some mysterious market rate for labor, and that's everybody's always keen to know what's the current rate for charging out labor, and it may bear little or no resemblance to what it needs to be in order to cover the overheads of the business and make a profit. But anyway, so what you need to do is extract out separately the aspects of the margin in each of these lines here. So in your materials, the cost to you was $45,000. You've charged them out at $50,000, so there's a $5,000 margin there. Subcontractors, they were going to cost $9,000, so you've added $1,000 margin there, so put that across to this other calculation. Your labor here is 1,000 hours, and you have figured on average you're making $10 an hour from your guys, so you've got your 1,000 hours there, times $10 is $10,000 margin there. So that adds up to a total of $16,000 margin on this job, which, again, is that enough? Hard to know, and it's also very difficult to be able to compare that figure to previous jobs, because in raw dollar terms it's difficult to compare apples with oranges. What you need to do is convert that margin into a percentage figure. To do that, you take the margin figure, $16,000, divide it by the selling price. That's the selling price to the client. And in this instance, 16,000 divided by 100,000 is 0.16, or in other words, 16%. And the $64,000 question is 16% enough of a margin? Because from that 16% gross margin, you have to pay your overheads of the company. That's all the vehicles, the phones and administration and back office support and what have you. You should be also paying yourself some form of owner's salary for the risk that you take in running a business and the nights you spend quoting jobs, etc. Also, you should be leaving a small amount of net profit in the business in order to fund future growth. And in another module, we look at the budgeting process, whereby the key outcome of that module is to come up with this magical gross profit percentage figure, which is what you need to be aiming at consistently, or at least on average across a period, in order to cover your overheads, provide your salary, leave net profit in the business, and have a healthy, financially secure business. So that's why this double checking of adding these margins together, coming up with that gross margin figure, then comparing it to your magic target figure, then you can decide if that's, if this project you need to be hitting 18, 19, 20%, then you've got to go back and recost it and find that somewhere, or be prepared to walk away from that job if it's going to be one that's going to mean that you end up losing on a net profit kind of basis. And it's better to know that up front than knowing that after you've done all the work. Because you have to keep score as you go. It's not much use waiting for your accountant to provide your accounts several months after the year is finished and told you what you did or didn't make. That's no good. As the game is going, you need to be keeping an eye on those key figures in your business, not only the final score, but also the stats as you're going through. The yardage made, and the tackle count, and the territory percentage, what have you. Because when you go into the changing shares at halftime, you've got to have those figures in your mind, because if you need to make some changes as the game goes on, you can't wait till after the game to make those changes. So, actions from the lesson today. Well, certainly the number one action to take is to look at introducing that second little mini profit calculation that you do on the side there of whatever system you're currently using, in order to try and determine what's the total amount of gross profit that this project is going to generate for me. And you may need to extract those pieces of profit from different areas of your job cost, but I want you to extract those all out and gather those together. That's going to give you a total gross profit figure. Divide that obviously into the sale price, and that's going to give you that overall gross profit percentage figure. Then you need to compare that to your target figure as to what you need to achieve in your business in order to cover all your overheads, give you a salary to recompense you for all of your effort and risk that you take, and then leave some over for some net profit in the business to fund growth. And if that project does give you enough profit to cover all that stuff, that's great. If it doesn't, then you need to maybe go back and revisit that costing again and find out where we can get some more profit. If it's well off the mark, then I guess you need to really look long and hard at making a decision as to whether or not you want to do that project or not. Because if you're not making profit on stuff, you're better off at the beach. As always, if you need to email with your questions, do so at that email address you see on the screen there. Keep an eye out for next lesson coming through in the next day or two into your inbox. If you want to jump ahead and get more details about how the course proper works, then certainly click on one of the links on the right hand side there. That will take you to the information page about the course, and will enable you then to click on to the shopping cart if you want to jump onto the course. If it looks like this is something definitely you want to do, that's fantastic, and I will look forward to seeing you on the course.